Okay, let's jump right into it. If you're building on Kubernetes, I'm sure you've heard all the buzz around platform engineering. But today, we're going to look at a totally fresh perspective, a new mental model for actually designing platforms that can scale. We're talking about going from layers to planes.
But before we get into the how, we've got to ask a simple and maybe a little uncomfortable question. With all this hype around internal developer platforms, or IDPs, does your business really need one? And here's the reality check. A proper platform engineering team, the kind that gives you 24/7 coverage, is a major, major investment. We're talking about $1 million a year, easy. And that's not some minor budget line item you can just sweep under the rug. So the crucial point is this. Building an IDP is definitely not a weekend project. It takes a dedicated team, probably 4 or 5 engineers minimum. And if your business itself isn't scaling yet, then your focus should be on scaling the business first, not on building a complex internal platform that could just end up being a very expensive luxury.
Okay, so let's say you've answered yes and you're all in. Now let's talk about the traditional way we think about this stuff and why it just breaks. We really need to move from this idea of layers to a much more dynamic model, planes.
I absolutely love this quote because it just hits the nail on the head. We tend to think of platforms as these neat, tidy hierarchical stacks, right? But real platforms don't work that way at all. They grow in every direction all at once.
So here's the core difference. That old layers model you see on the left, it's vertical and it's static. It creates these really rigid dependencies that just break way too easily. I mean, imagine your security layer needs a critical update. In that layered model, that can force breaking changes on everything above and below it, a total cascade of failures. And the result? You get this messy spaghetti diagram with YAML stuck in every corner. But the planes model on the right is horizontal and domain-oriented. It's designed to let different parts of your platform evolve and interact without bringing the whole thing crashing down. So what's the solution then? Well, we need a shared mental map to help us get a handle on all this complexity. So let's look at the 5 planes model, which is based on some fantastic work from the team over at platformengineering.org.
I think this is a feeling so many of us can relate to. You open up the Cloud Native Computing Foundation landscape, and it's just this digital jungle, a zoo with thousands of logos, and you have no idea where to even start. And this 5 planes model, well, this is our guide through that zoo. It gives us a structure to understand where all these animals live and how they actually fit together in the bigger picture. So let's break down the first plane. First up, we've got the developer plane. Think of this as the front door to your platform. It's where your developers spend all their time, using the tools they already know and love. And the goal here is to give them a golden path, not a golden cage. You want to make the right way the easy way without locking them into something they hate. And that means integrating right into their existing workflows. We're talking about their IDEs, like VS Code, their source control, like GitHub or GitLab, and maybe even developer portals like Backstage or Port to give them one single place to see and interact with everything the platform offers. Next up is the integration and delivery plane. I like to think of this as the factory floor of your platform. This is really where the platform team gets to shine, automating the whole shebang when it comes to building, packaging, and deploying software. This plane is basically the engine of self-service. It's got your CI pipelines, your container registries, your GitOps tools like Argo CD and Flux for those nice declarative deployments, and sometimes even platform orchestrators like Humanitech to manage the entire application lifecycle. All right, plane number 3, the monitoring and logging plane. Its job is pretty simple, but it is absolutely critical. It's all about providing visibility into what's happening across every single cluster and application. The goal? See the problems before your users do. Now, you can build this plane out with some really powerful SaaS solutions like Datadog or Dynatrace, or you can roll your own open source stack with tools like Prometheus for metrics, Grafana for the pretty dashboards, and Loki for logs. The key, though, is centralizing all that visibility. The 4th plane is all about security, and trust me, it's so much more than just managing secrets. This thing covers everything from identity and access management to network policies and compliance. The big goal here is to make security a seamless part of the developer workflow, not some frustrating roadblock. So this plane has a bunch of key pieces. You've got tools for secrets management like Vault, identity providers like Keycloak, network policy enforcement with something like Cilium, and then policy as code engines like Open Policy Agent to enforce all your rules automatically. And finally, we get to the resource plane.
Or more accurately, the resource planes, plural. This is where your YAML finally meets the actual hardware. It's what defines where your workloads run, connecting your whole platform architecture to the reality of the underlying infrastructure.
This includes your Kubernetes clusters, obviously, but also your databases like Postgres, your storage systems, and all the managed services from cloud providers like AWS, Azure, or GCP. You might even have multiple resource planes, say one for each environment or each cloud provider.
Okay, so that's the theory, but does this model actually work in the real world? Well, let's take a look at a fantastic open source example that really puts this whole thinking in planes idea into practice. OpenCoreo.
OpenCoreo, which is an open source IDP from WSO2, is a perfect case study here. Its architecture is explicitly designed around planes. It has a control plane for coordination, data planes where workloads run, a dedicated build plane for CI, and then separate planes for observability and identity. It's a textbook implementation of this model.
So after all of that, what's the single most important thing to take away from this whole mindset? It really comes down to how you organize complexity, where you put control and where you allow for distribution.
It all boils down to this one powerful principle: centralize what needs control, decentralize what needs scale. You need to think like a cloud provider. They don't run a separate identity service for every single customer, right? No way. They centralize core services like identity, observability, and control, while they distribute the resources that actually need to scale. And you can apply that exact same logic to your internal platform. And that brings us to the final thought I want to leave you with. Now that you have this mental map, take a fresh look at your own organization's platform, or maybe the one you're planning to build. How would you map your current tools and processes onto these 5 planes? It's a really powerful exercise that can show you where you've got real structure and where you might just have a pile of disconnected tools.